Have you ever wondered why, as an empath, you seem to attract people who secretly envy you, drain you, or even resent you? You're kind, you're compassionate, you try to be the light in people's lives. And yet, instead of always being met with gratitude, sometimes you're met with hostility, passive aggression, or coldness you can't explain. It leaves you thinking, why me? Why do people resent the very light I'm trying to bring into the world? If you felt this way, stay with me, because Carl Jung's psychology may hold the answer. And once you understand it, you'll never see your relationships the same way again. Now here's the curious part. Jung taught that the human psyche is full of hidden shadows, qualities we deny, reject, or suppress. And when someone shines brightly, like an empath naturally does, that light doesn't just warm others. It also exposes the parts of them they don't want to see. Imagine carrying around secrets you'd rather forget, and then someone's presence makes you feel like they're all on display. That's why your empathy can heal some people, but irritate others. So the big question we'll explore in this video is, why do empaths who live with such open hearts attract people who resent them instead of celebrating them? And more importantly, what can you do about it without dimming your light? These are not just surface-level answers. Jung's insights will take us deep into the mystery of projection, shadow, and human relationships. Stick with me until the end, because we'll uncover not just why this happens, but also how you can protect your energy and keep shining without guilt. And while we dive into this, don't forget to hit subscribe, because we'll be exploring more of Jung's wisdom and how it applies to your real life, so you never feel alone on this journey. People often think being an empath just means you're too sensitive, but that description barely scratches the surface. Empaths don't just feel their own emotions. They can feel what's happening inside others, sometimes even before the other person admits it. Walk into a room, and an empath picks up on the tension, the sadness, or the joy lingering in the air. It's not just sensitivity. It's almost like emotional intuition. Jung would say that empaths are deeply connected to the unconscious currents that flow between people. They embody a kind of inner balance between the masculine and feminine energies, the anima and animus, that lets them access wisdom most people shut off. That's why empaths often know what someone needs before the words are spoken. Here's where it gets fascinating. Their very presence brings comfort, because people feel seen without having to explain themselves. But for others, that same presence feels unsettling. Why? Because if you've been hiding from your true self, an empath's light feels like a mirror, reflecting back the things you don't want to face. And that's where resentment creeps in. So are empaths blessed or cursed? In reality, they're both. Their gift makes them natural healers, but it also makes them magnets for projection and hidden envy. And if you've ever felt drained after being around someone who just couldn't stand your calm or your kindness, don't go anywhere. In the next part, we'll uncover exactly why your light awakens shadows in others, and why that resentment says more about them than it ever does about you. Stay tuned, and remember, if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time, because you don't want to miss where this journey takes us next. Carl Jung believed that every human being carries what he called the shadow, the hidden side of the psyche that contains everything we deny, repress, or can't bear to acknowledge. It's not just the obvious bad traits like anger, greed, or jealousy. It can also hold creative talents we were told weren't valuable, ambitions that felt selfish, or emotions that were shamed out of us as children. The shadow is essentially the box where the unwanted parts of ourselves are locked away, out of sight, but never truly gone. Now here's the fascinating part. Empaths, simply by being themselves, have a way of awakening those shadows in others. They don't have to say anything or confront anyone directly. Their presence, their honesty, and their light act like a mirror. If someone is hiding anger, your calm kindness may remind them of how out of touch they are with their own peace. If they've buried their sensitivity, your openness might make them feel both drawn to you and irritated by the parts of themselves they've rejected. This is where resentment is born. When people see in you what they cannot accept in themselves, they project their discomfort outward. Instead of saying, I feel unsettled because I've ignored my shadow, they unconsciously decide, something about you bothers me. Your empathy becomes the trigger for their unhealed wounds. And instead of gratitude, You're met with coldness, envy, or hostility that doesn't quite make sense on the surface. The truth is, their reaction says more about them than it ever does about you. You didn't cause their shadow. You just revealed it. Jung would say that projection is the key mechanism here. People cast onto others the very traits they can't acknowledge within. As an empath, you end up being the canvas for this projection, carrying their unspoken struggles. So if you've ever wondered why someone suddenly resents you after leaning on your light, it's because you've stirred something in them they'd rather keep hidden. Don't click away, because next we'll explore the strange paradox of why people are both drawn to your warmth and secretly irritated by it. And trust me, you'll want to hear this part. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Here's the strange paradox. People are often magnetized by an empath's warmth, but at the very same time, they feel an undercurrent of resentment. On the surface, they love your compassion, your patience, and the way you make them feel safe. But deep inside, they envy the freedom and authenticity you seem to carry so naturally. It's as if your light reminds them of the chains they've never broken within themselves. Carl Jung explained this dynamic through projection. When someone hasn't made peace with their insecurities or unacknowledged desires, they unconsciously pin those feelings on someone else. If a person struggles with being emotionally closed off, they may admire how openly you express care, yet secretly resent you for doing what they can't. If they've lived their life suppressing sensitivity, your ease with emotional depth feels both attractive and unbearable. Think about that friend who calls you whenever they need to be heard. They lean on your listening ear, pouring out their heart. And yet, after the conversation, you sense a shift. Maybe they grow distant, or they throw a backhanded compliment like, "You always have it so easy." Or consider the coworker who gravitates toward your calm presence during stressful times, but then rolls their eyes when you don't crumble under pressure like they do. They admire your peace, but it irritates them at the same time. That's the paradox empaths face. People crave the light, but the light also exposes the shadows they're not ready to face. They want what you offer, but they resent being reminded of what they haven't yet found in themselves. And here's the key. This paradox is not your fault. It's simply a reflection of their inner conflict. So the next time someone seems both drawn to you and oddly resentful, remember, it's not confusion, it's projection. And in the next section, we'll dive into why this constant push and pull leaves empaths so drained, and how you can stop carrying the emotional weight of others. Stay with me until the end, and don't forget to subscribe, because the next insight may be the peace you've been waiting for. One of the hardest truths for empaths to face is that being around people isn't just about sharing joy or kindness. It's also about absorbing what others can't carry themselves. When you step into a room, you don't just feel the surface emotions. You pick up on the unspoken hostility, the subtle jealousy, the quiet resentment hiding under someone's smile. And over time, that constant intake wears you down like a weight you never asked to hold. The exhaustion doesn't always come from dramatic arguments or obvious conflict. It's the invisible labor of holding space for people who are fighting their own shadows. When someone projects their pain onto you, you end up processing emotions that aren't even yours. You sense their bitterness, their insecurity, their envy. And instead of letting it bounce off, you unconsciously absorb it. Imagine being the emotional filter for every person you meet. That's why you walk away from conversations feeling tired, even if nothing bad was said. This is more than just fatigue. It can quietly chip away at your motivation and sense of self-worth. If enough people secretly resent your light, you may start to question whether shining is even safe. You might ask yourself, am I too much? Am I the problem? The truth is, you're not the problem. You're just carrying the cost of being someone's mirror. But when this cycle repeats again and again, it can feel like your energy, your drive, and even your joy are slipping through your hands. Jung would say this happens because the empath becomes entangled in projections. Instead of living their own truth, they get pulled into playing roles in other people's unfinished stories. And unless you learn to notice this pattern, it can drain you until you feel like a shell of yourself. But here's the good news. Being drained is not the end of your story. It's a signal. It's telling you where boundaries are needed, where you must reclaim your space. And in the next part, we'll explore exactly how empaths can protect their light without guilt, so they can keep shining without being consumed. Stay with me, and don't forget to subscribe, because what comes next is the key to turning your sensitivity into strength. Carl Jung often spoke about individuation, the process of becoming your true self, whole and undivided. For empaths, this wisdom is essential. It means you are not here to dissolve into the pain of others, no matter how much you care. You are here to live authentically, to integrate your own shadow, and to shine your light without apology. Protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's the very step that allows you to keep giving without being consumed. The first layer of protection is awareness. Start noticing the subtle shifts in your body and emotions when you're around someone. If you leave a conversation feeling drained or uneasy, it's a sign you've absorbed energy that isn't yours. Instead of carrying it home, imagine releasing it through journaling, walking in nature, or even a quiet breath of letting go. Awareness gives you the power to choose. This belongs to them, not me. Then comes boundaries. Many empaths struggle with this word because it feels like pushing people away. But a boundary isn't a wall, it's a filter. It lets love and connection through while stopping the projections and resentment that don't belong to you. Saying no, limiting your time with certain people, or refusing to explain your choices is not cruelty. It's self-respect. And here's the reframe that can change everything. Resentment is not proof that your light is wrong. It's proof that your light is strong. If your presence stirs shadows in others, it means you're shining brightly enough to wake something sleeping inside them. Their discomfort is not your weakness. It's their invitation to grow. So protect your light not by dimming it, but by anchoring it. The world doesn't need you drained and doubtful. It needs you radiant and steady. Stay with me, because in the next part, we'll uncover the signs that someone secretly resents you and how to spot them before they silently drain your energy. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time, because the next insight could be the one that saves you from years of carrying someone else's shadow. Resentment doesn't always come dressed as open hostility. In fact, the people who secretly resent you are often the ones who smile in your face while their energy tells a very different story. For empaths, this is especially tricky. You can feel the shift even when you can't explain it. One moment they're warm, the next they're colder, distant, or strangely irritated by your presence. If you've ever felt this, you weren't imagining it. That subtle tension is often the first sign of hidden resentment. Sometimes it shows up as dismissals, so small they're easy to overlook. Maybe you share something you're proud of, and instead of celebrating you, they downplay it. Oh, that's nothing. Anyone could do that. Other times, it comes as a backhanded compliment. You're so nice, maybe too nice, or it must be easy for you since you don't have real problems. On the surface, it sounds harmless, but underneath, it's a way of cutting you down without admitting what they really feel. Another red flag is how they respond to your success. Notice the friend who suddenly withdraws when things go well for you, or the coworker who changes the subject when you're recognized. They may have leaned on your empathy when they were struggling, but your victories awaken the shadows of their own insecurity. Here's the truth. Empaths often sense resentment before it's spoken, and that intuition is a gift. Don't ignore it. By noticing these signs early, you protect your energy from being drained slowly over time. You give yourself permission to step back before their hidden hostility turns into your silent exhaustion. Stay with me, because in the conclusion we'll bring this full circle. Why attracting resentment is actually proof of your strength, not your flaw. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect moment. The final insight might completely change the way you see yourself as an empath. If you take one thing away from this, let it be this. Attracting resentment does not mean you're failing. It doesn't mean you're too much, too sensitive, or somehow wrong for being who you are. In fact, it means the opposite. It means you are radiant enough, authentic enough, and alive enough that your light awakens something in others, even the parts they'd rather keep hidden. That is not your burden to carry. That is simply the power of your presence. The brighter your light, the more shadows it reveals. This isn't a punishment, it's a natural law. Your empathy, your kindness, your calm. These qualities reflect back to others the pieces of themselves they've neglected. Some people will thank you for it. Others will resent you for it. Neither reaction is about your worth. Both are about how your light interacts with their shadow. But here's the real question I want you to reflect on. Are you dimming yourself just to avoid that resentment? Have you ever made yourself smaller, quieter, or less joyful just so others would feel more comfortable? If so, maybe it's time to reclaim your full brightness. The world doesn't need you to shrink. It needs you to shine without apology. And if this message speaks to you, don't let it stop here. Subscribe, because together we'll keep diving into Carl Jung's wisdom and uncovering how it can protect your spirit in a world that doesn't always understand it. Keep watching, because the next insight may be the one that frees you from years of unnecessary self-doubt. Your empathy is not a weakness. It's your gift. Guard it, honor it. And above all, never dim your light just because someone else hasn't yet embraced their own.